Okay, welcome everybody. Today's webinar is all about what to do with your old 401k, which is a very common question that we get asked. And there are a couple different options you have, so I thought it'd be helpful to run through that. I don't think this will be our longest webinar ever, but I do think it's an important one. So thank you for joining us, and we hope that you get something out of this. So for starters, we'll call it three different options. And I think it's important to understand that there is a bit of a conflict of interest that arises whenever any professional is giving you advice about what to do with your money. In this case, your 401k. So I am a financial advisor. One of the ways that we are compensated is with assets under management. So right off the bat, to be transparent, I have a conflict of interest that if you choose to roll your 401k over to me or my firm, that generally benefits me, and I can be biased in that way. But I want to go through all the pros and cons of three different options. Option one, and the one that happens a lot of times, but maybe not always intentionally, is leave it where it is. Most plans, your employer will allow you to leave the assets in the plan. They do not kick you out the day that you leave your job. And we find people that have 401k plans, 403b plans, any kind of employer or any kind of employer benefit still in place years later. And unfortunately, we find people that have like 5, 6, 7, 20 different 401k plans out there because they've changed jobs that many times. So the pros of leaving it where it is, well, you don't have to do anything, which is always great, right? So you don't have to do anything. It's already there. Leave it how it is. That's fine. It is also exempt from the pro rata rule for a backdoor Roth. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a couple of slides, but just know that's a thing that exists, and having the money in your employer plan excludes you from that. And also, a lot of people don't understand that with a 401k, you can actually take withdrawals at age 55 without paying a penalty, as long as you're separated from service. So if you're no longer working at a place, you've left, the old 401k is sitting there, you turn age 55, now you can take money out of that without paying a penalty, which depending on when you plan on retiring or when you plan on using this money, that can definitely be beneficial. Now, the cons, I think, are kind of obvious with this one. So with option one, leave it where it is. You may lose track of things. So if you have a bunch of plans out there and the company that you work for changes who they're doing the 401k plan through, that can get confusing. If you yourself move and change addresses and are no longer getting that statement in the mail, that can be annoying. And then in the modern world, how many passwords do we have? If you have 5 different 401k plans out there, that probably means 5 different website addresses you need to go to, 5 different usernames, 5 different passwords. So having things a little bit more consolidated is usually better for most people. Second con is, well, limited investment options. You are at the mercy of whatever your employer says you can invest in. And some plans have a ton of investment options. Some are quite limited. Generally speaking, we can all agree that more options is better. And then lastly, this is, again, where my bias comes in. If it's in the old plan, you probably don't have professional guidance on that. I'm an advocate for professional financial planning, of course. It's everything that I do, but I do think that I think most people will agree that there is value in having professional eyes on your investments or on your financial planning in general. So that's option one. We don't find a lot of people intentionally doing option one, but we do find a lot of people unintentionally doing it. And if you, what's the saying? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So I think that fits into option one. Option two. So the other option that you generally have is you can roll over your old 401k plan or 403b plan, whatever type of employer-sponsored plan you have, and you can roll it into your new employer's plan, assuming that you are working somewhere, you're not retired or taking some time away from work. Your new employer likely has a plan, and you can probably roll it into there. That is not a 100% of the time, or that's not always true, not 100% of the time. Some employer plans will not allow incoming rollovers, so you do need to check on that, or your HR person can probably explain it to you if this is the option you choose. The pros of that is you can truly have all of your money in one place. Now, you may have pre-tax and after-tax money, but you can consolidate as much as possible by keeping all your pre-tax money in your current employer's plan and rolling it over, which a lot of people do like. With the 401k, now you'll have a balance in the new plan, and you can take a loan against that. I'm not going to say never. I'm usually not an advocate for taking loans against your retirement accounts. Obviously, you're saving money in these accounts, and that's not really why you're doing it. But generally speaking, you can get a better or more favorable interest rate taking a loan against your 401k than you could if you're going to get a personal loan, or certainly better than having a balance in your 401k. So one benefit is you can take a loan against it. Third benefit is we also have this pro rata rule come back into effect, and I'm going to wait until the last slide to explain that. But as long as your money is in a 401k plan or 403b plan or some kind of employer-sponsored vehicle, you get to have an exemption from the pro rata rule for Roth conversions. Again, I'll explain that in a minute. Exempt from RMD requirement. So this is only applicable to people after a certain age. So if you are old enough and retired in your 70s and you're looking at taking an RMD, which is a required minimum distribution, for those of you that haven't gotten to this yet, that is when the IRS makes you start taking money out of your employer-sponsored plans or your pre-tax IRA. And they're doing this so that they can charge tax on it, right? They're generating taxable income and you are paying tax on it. So at some point, they make you start taking it out. However, if you are, let's say, 75 years old and you're still working, good for you. But if you're still working at age 75 and you choose to put all of your pre-tax money into the retirement plan with the job that you're still going to, that you still work at, you are now exempt from the RMD. Compare that to somebody that has maybe an IRA and they have a 401k at their new employer and they're 75. The RMD rules would state that you'd have to take RMDs out of that IRA or old retirement account. So for that, if you are taking RMDs and you're in the situation, understand the rules there. And lastly, for the pros, we have the same situation as the last slide where you can take money out at age 55 and separate from service. So let's say you're 45 years old, you get a new job, you roll the old 401k into your new 401k, and then you work for 10 years, you're 55, you decide it's time to retire. You can pull money out of that account once you're separated from service and not pay that extra 10% IRS tax penalty for a premature withdrawal. Exciting stuff, I know. All right, next, we have cons. So why would you not want to roll your old 401k into your new employer's plan? Same as the last slide, we have limited investment options. You are now at mercy of whatever your new employer's plan offers. They are not all created equal, so don't just assume your 401k is a 401k. That's all there is to it. Look into the investment options that are available, the fees that are part of that, and it may or may not make sense to consolidate into that. And then also, generally speaking, and there are exceptions, you have a lack of professional guidance, which can hurt you if you don't know what you're doing, or maybe you just value having somebody who does. So that's option 2. So far, we have option 1, leave it where it is. Option 2, move it to the new employer's plan. And then option 3 is maybe the most common one we see, but I don't want to say that without looking at the statistic to back it up. But option 3 is rolling over to an IRA. An IRA is an individual retirement account. The benefit of this, and we'll go through the pros, but you are essentially taking it away from any employer and you're putting it into your own hands as an individual, so you have nobody telling you what to do with that money. But the pros are simple. So significantly more investment options. I think this is important, especially as you get into larger balances. If you work somewhere for a couple months and you've got $5,000 in your 401k, I mean, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but you might not care as much about having better investment options. Whereas with the IRA, you're going to have more options. 2, option for professional guidance. So this is where my bias plays in. I think there is great value in having professional guidance in your financial life, whether it is just on asset management or also on financial planning, which I would argue is more important. The IRA opens up the opportunity for you to work with most financial advisors if that's what you want. Second, we have the IRA can be used as a landing spot. So one difference between my generation, my parents' generation is, well, my parents both worked at the same employer for 30 plus years and then they retired. We're seeing that the millennials, Gen X, Gen Z, who are starting to get jobs, are probably going to have more career changes throughout their lives. So they might not work at the same place for 30 years, but they might work at a different place every 5 years. And if that's the case, having an IRA established, it can be the landing spot for each rollover as you leave an employer, and use that as an opportunity to consolidate and do it outside of any employer plan. So I think that can be hugely beneficial to the right investor. And also a continuing contribution. So in some situations, you can continue to contribute to your IRA once it's set up. This makes a lot of sense for self-employed people. If you do not have an employer-sponsored plan and you still want those pre-tax contributions, you can do that. So I think that can make a lot of sense. And then on the other side of it, so as you get older and you are retired, at some point, I would say you want to have your money into an IRA for simplicity of distributions. So every employer is different with this, but some employers, if you're retired and you leave the money in the 401k and you want to take a distribution, you need to go through that employer or their third-party administrator to have somebody sign off on the distribution every time you do that. Whereas with the IRA, it's very simply just linked to your checking account, and you can call your advisor and say, hey, Alex, I need $5,000 to book a vacation we want to take, and have the money there in 24 hours. Much simpler. Or you can set it up to have a automatic distribution, just like a paycheck, and maybe on the first day of every month, you get X amount of dollars sent to your checking account, which is a nice way to do it. And lastly is you have the option for Roth conversions. So we think about Roth conversions a lot of times for people that are retired. Maybe they leave their job, they're retired, they have a lower income. Let's take advantage of that by moving some of our pre-tax money to an after-tax Roth account. You generally want to do that when you're in a lower tax bracket, so that when you pull the money out down the road, it comes out of the Roth tax-free. It's an important strategy in financial planning that I spend a lot of time talking about. But a lot of times it's not just the retired people this makes sense for. You might want to take advantage of a Roth conversion for a lot of reasons. It could be that you are in a position where you get bonuses and commission at work, and for whatever reason you're having a year where you have less income. That could be a great opportunity to do a Roth conversion while you're in a lower tax bracket. As I'm saying this, I think of a lot of the realtors that we work with. If you're a realtor and the last couple of years have been hard for you, there's not a lot of houses to sell, or there's just not enough sellers, you might have a year where your commissions are a little bit lower, and maybe 2024, maybe 2023 was a great opportunity to do a Roth conversion at a lower tax bracket. And that's generally going to be an opportunity that's available on an IRA and not a 401k. So I think there's a lot of financial planning things that go around the IRA that just aren't available in an employer-sponsored plan. Now, I'm biased, like I said, but let's also talk about the cons. So why would you not want to roll your 401k to an IRA? A few reasons listed out. I know you're probably sick of me reading at you, but I want to give some explanation on them. So one is, with the IRA, you're now locking the money up until age 59 and a half. There are some caveats to this I'm not getting into today, where you can do something called a 72T and take money out earlier. If you don't know what that is or want to know, let me know, but that's not the purpose of today's. Generally speaking, we're locking our money up for 4.5 additional years as to if it were in the 401k plan. So you are losing some liquidity there. It might make sense to leave part of your money in a 401k plan to have something liquid and available, but we can talk about that later. It's a very specific situation. Subject to the pro rata rules. So I've teased this a few times, so let's take a little bit of a minute to explain what a backdoor Roth is. So a backdoor Roth is a way that an individual who makes over the Roth income limits, so there are income limits for people to contribute to a Roth IRA. So if I make $500,000 a year, I can no longer contribute to a Roth IRA the normal way. I can do something called a backdoor Roth. What that is I'm making a non-deductible IRA contribution into a pre-tax IRA. So a traditional IRA, I'm not deducting it, so it's not becoming pre-tax money. And then I'm doing a Roth conversion, which we talked about already, to move it from that traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. So what you really need to know about this is that even if you're over the income limit, you can still do a Roth IRA. It's called a backdoor Roth IRA. It takes some fancy paperwork and administrative work to do it, but it is essentially a loophole that allows you to contribute to a Roth just like all your friends can, which is great. However, what they do is they have an aggregation rule where they're looking at all the IRA money you have when you convert it, and they're going to do it on a pro rata basis. So they're going to say if you've got whatever $100,000 in IRA assets and you want to contribute $7,000 and convert it right away, take advantage of the backdoor Roth, they're going to look at the gains that you have on the taxable or the pre-tax IRA, and you're going to pay tax on part of that. What it really boils down to, without getting into all the technical details, is you probably just don't want to do a backdoor Roth if you have a lot of money in an IRA. It can still make sense, but it becomes a little bit of a headache. So to avoid this, you can shelter your money in your 401k plan. Like we talked about in the last two slides, either leave it in a 401k, roll it into your new employer's plan. And in doing that, you can do the backdoor Roth without having to worry about any of these pro rata rules. So it makes it a lot cleaner and simpler. That can be confusing. If it didn't make sense and it affects you, reach out and I'll give you a better explanation. But it's important to know, and that is one of the cons to having a rollover IRA. Con 2 or con 3. We cannot loan against an IRA. So with your 401k, you can take loans against it if your employer allows it. So there are some different rules there. But generally speaking, you can take a loan against a 401k, and you can never take a loan against an IRA. So if you are in a position or think you might be in a position down the road where you're going to want to take a loan against your IRA, you can't. So consider that when you make this decision. You can, however, roll that money back into a 401k down the road if you decide something came up and you need to do that. But that is something that's important to keep in mind. And it would be separated from your new employer's plan. So you are essentially having a second account out there. If you're still working, you would have your new 401k where you're contributing money. You would have your rollover IRA that is held separately. Now you have two accounts, which I've talked to people that say that is way too many accounts, Alex. I cannot have two accounts. It'll drive me nuts. Fine. But if you can stomach having a second account, it might make sense. And then the other part of this is what we talked about on the last slide, is that if you are over the age of 73 or 70 and a half or 75, whatever year you're born, whenever your RMD age is, you would have to take an RMD out of your IRA, even if you are still working. So it might make sense for somebody who's 75 to roll their IRA into their 401k to avoid RMDs. So that is the three reasons, or the three different options that you have with your 401k. I think it is a common question. I want to be clear in saying that the IRA is not the only option. There are plenty of reasons, as we highlighted, why you may not want to do that. But thank you for joining us. Please take a minute to read all our disclosures here. They're super interesting, and I think you'll find them helpful. But thank you for joining us, and we'll talk soon.